Welcome back to the devlog for my game Zedcab, an arcade-style driving game that I am developing in Unity. If you're new here, welcome, my name is Geeze, and I've been working on Zedcab now for a few months, starting as a 24-hour game jam and aiming to go all the way to a full release at some point in the future. In my previous devlog, I added the basics for the quest system, a way to interact with your local NPCs, complete tasks for them, and earn zombie splatters and extra prizes. And over the last few weeks, I've been fleshing this system out and designing the first quests for the game. So let's get right into it. So what is a car game without a race or two to complete? These were the most obvious quests to add to the game and were really easy to implement with my quest system, and basically just guided collection quests like the missing ducklings I added in the last video. So the race handler needs a few things. It needs a start point for the race, a list of checkpoints, and a finish line. To make the races somewhat competitive, they also need some form of timer, which I didn't have in the game yet, so I made one. All it does is start at a float, count down with delta time, and when it goes to 0, trigger an event. The quests didn't actually have any way of failing or repeating a step, so I added the base function to the quest class, and then in the race handler, I can overwrite it to restart the race, bring up a fail UI, that sort of thing. With the basic race handler in place, I created the race prefab template. How I make the quests in the game is very simple. They each have their own handler type, and then I create a prefab with all of the parts they need to operate. In the race one, there's the handler, a list of checkpoints, the tile map for the environment changes, and some basic UI stuff, like the timer prefab. I then just create variants for each individual quest. This means that if I need to update the base prefab for any reason, they all get the changes, which is really nice and saves me a lot of time if I do it correctly. I did once accidentally overwrite my prefabs, which wasn't ideal, but only wasted about 10 minutes, so moving on. Like I just mentioned there, the races come with tile maps, which I use to draw the race outline. I wanted them to be similar to what some of the F1 street circuits are like, where the roads are closed off to create a track, and by using a new tile map on top of the existing ones, I could just draw out the barriers to make the circuits fit into the world. I started by creating a tile palette with the initial designs looking like this. I wanted to get the road markings down, and I think they're looking pretty good. The barrier part of it looks a bit meh, but I'll probably come back to this later down the line when I tidy up the visuals everywhere. In the sprite editor, I set the physics outline to just the barrier section, which means that when I add a tile map collider to the barriers map, the player can drive over the red road parts just fine, but will crash into the walls. So now with the races, the player is stuck within the track and can hopefully figure out which way to go. I've also got plans to add some extra markings like arrows or chevrons just to nail it home which way the player is going, but for now, that'll do. Every good race needs to be absolutely plastered in adverts, and if you've seen the shorts I made documenting my progress, then you'll have seen these designs I drew up. I'm really happy with how these look. I think I did a pretty good job with them, by being clear what they're parodying, while still fitting the style of the game. Try to guess in the comments below what brands these are based off of. If you get it right, you'll win your very own zombie. I also asked what brands I should parody next at the end of the shorts, and the results were, interesting. Hopefully you guys have some better ones. I wanted to get that authentic feel of an F1 race by just covering the walls with these same logos at every point. So by using a sprite renderer set to tiled, and by having all of the designs contained in a single long sprite, I can just stretch the sprite out and the adverts repeat like this. I then just chuck them next to basically every road, and it looks pretty great. There's a few issues with the sizing, especially at outside corners like here. The boards don't reach properly, but I'll fix that with other decorative pieces as well, like pit stops, tire stacks, basically anything you'd find on the streets of Monaco. I set up the first race in the game, a loop around the houses and golf course in the north of the town called Victoria's Race, given to you by the NPC, Victoria. She's currently just a red duck, but will have an actual design at some point. The race is about a minute long, so on the shorter side, but will probably be a lapped event in the game. I've just kept it to a single lap for testing purposes, and if you speak to the duck, it starts like any other quest. So the races are technically in the game, but they look, not good. So it's time for a bit of polish to get these up to standard. So the first problem is the fact that the car just teleports to the start line in plain view of the player, isn't facing the right way, and there's a bug with my rotation code that makes it think it's still facing its original direction. So I've got a few things to add all at once. The car is moved by the game manager, which sets it down at the start line. So in here, I added a delay to this and created a super simple fade object. All this is a giant image that fills the entire screen, and through the animator, it slides its alpha all the way up, waits a second, and then slides it back down again, giving that fade in effect. So when the move car function is called, it waits a second, fades out the screen, moves the car, and then fades it back in again, which looks infinitely better than just blinking to the start line for no reason. Later on, I may design some more intricate version of this, and the best example I can give for what I mean is in SpongeBob SquarePants Battle for Bikini Bottom. When you switch character, a bus blocks the view while the change happens seamlessly, and it just looks way cooler than a fade. But for now, this will do. I also made it so the move function has a parameter for the rotation, because it was a bit stupid not rotating at the start of the race, and I fixed the weird bug which is caused by the rotation script storing the last value locally and not just reading the current rotation, but that's all sorted and it looks like this. When you start a race step, it just starts. There's no time to get ready, you're just off. So I needed to add a starting block with a countdown. This involves a few steps. The first is disabling the player's input, but I still wanted them to be able to shoot and do everything you can, just not move. So I created a secondary input map that has everything the player map does except the movement. And that works perfectly. So just like when you converse with an NPC and it sets you to the UI map, this does the same. I also stopped the timer from starting as soon as they began, and instead added a new function called start race. That, well, it's pretty obvious what that function does, and that is called by the new race lights in the game. I added a new UI element to the races, where these lovely looking lights swing down into frame, do their animations, and on the green light, using animation events, the race begins. This all looks really clean and I'm very happy with it. Around the racetrack, I also wanted to add speakers, like a stadium announcer kind of thing, and have it to be coming from the world, not just some godlike voice in your ears. So I made a quick script for the speaker system. Basically, all this does is take a sound clip in a function and plays it out of every speaker around the track at once. They're all configured to be only audible when you're right next to them, and with spatial sounds, you can hear it going as you drive past, which is pretty cool. I don't have anything real to play in the speakers yet, but I will do at some point. The final thing I wanted to tackle was the timer visuals, as they were not exactly great looking. This basic panel and font weren't going to cut it, and I spent a ridiculous amount of time playing around with the pixel perfect fonts, trying to get it right, but for some reason I just couldn't. I wanted to replicate a 7-segment clock like you would see at races, and I wanted the UI's pixel density to match the game's, which in Unity is actually pretty annoying. After hours of trying to import custom fonts, meddling with the settings, searching through the one post I could find that actually wanted this to be a thing, but it was no use. TextMesh Pro fonts all look kinda bad. I don't really know why, but if I zoom in, you can see here that this is not crisp at all. And the temporary fix to this that will probably be permanent is that I imported the 10 numbers in as sprites and set up a custom clock that just cycles through the numbers, so instead of writing the time as a string, it changes the image of each digit by grabbing the numbers from a list. This was very easy to set up at least, and looks amazing. I just wished I could get this done with a text box instead. If you know how to fix this, then please help. I don't want to set these up again. So that's going to do it for this episode. I do have some more plans to further improve the races, but you're just going to have to wait and see. I also still need to work on the quest log I have had planned for a while now, so maybe expect that next time. Who knows? But anyway, thank you for watching. Leave a like and comment down below what you think of these races, what else you'd want to see added, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.